Anyway, good morning to happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
I've not seen you this year.
Happy New Year.
I've not seen you this year.
No. Well, I sort of quite far from here, and I don't normally out in the morning, so I couldn't really estimate how long it takes. Yeah,
it's all right.
Yeah.
It's good to see you again. I hope you've been keeping well. Apart from shughuli ya kulinda katiba na Kenya.
Tunajaribu. We shouldn't be doing this, but there you are. This is not what we should be doing. Yeah. Honestly, we have so many other sort of challenges as a country, and especially now, that the last thing we should be doing is having to put those things aside to fight to defend something which really shouldn't require to be defended. Yeah, and those we are defending it from people who are sworn to protect it.
Wow.
You know, they have sworn to protect it, but they are now they are the threats
to the same thing they swore.
So it's quite the same thing they swore to protect. The other thing they want to destroy it, and something which you worked so hard for so long, and which I think everybody appreciates why we needed it. Well, I guess many young people might not actually have lived it. For those of us who have lived the life, live in Kenya before the new constitution, and now are really amazed that there are people who actually think that taking us back in sort of going backwards is actually a good thing.
By the way, ongera kwanza, congratulations for your petition yesterday on the preservation.
Yeah, it's obviously sort of gives us a reason to be hopeful. We think that actually ours and also quite a lot of the other petitions that have been consolidated with our petition have a lot of merit. So we encouraged to see at least the judges so it fits to grant those conservatory orders. And hopefully we trust that they will be impartial in considering the merits of the cases. We of course apprehensive because we have seen one of the objectives of those people who are assaulting the constitution is to undermine judicial independence, and we are already seeing a very vicious assault on the judiciary over and above sort of the contempt of the courts and court rulings. We are now seeing an assault on the judiciary. So we do hope that pray for our judges that they have the courage of their calling as well as their convictions,
standing for the truth,
and are able to withstand some of the assaults that may be coming their way. We hope there will not be any, but we saw even an assault on the acting Chief Justice the other day. Those are things we thought we had left behind in the 70s and 80s. They were very frequent in the 80s.
Now it's very alive.
Yeah. So you people are relearning our history. Young people, you are relearning our history and why it is we needed to fight for a new constitution. I think this is the first time in the life of Kenya, because of course, Kenya, when it was established as a colony, the judiciary was not there to serve the people. The judiciary was there to legitimize oppression. I don't know whether many young people actually know that in many places the DC and the judge were the same person.
DC and the judge, district commissioner.
Yes, judges, DCs in colonial Kenya. So there was no judicial independence, and of course that we tried to create an independent judiciary after independence. Of course, it was not allowed to be independent. You had occasionally courageous judges, one or two chief justices, madam, who are courageous and tried to be independent. But really, since 2010, is the first time in the history of Kenya that we have actually seen the meaning of an independent judiciary. The first time. And you can see that our post-colonial political class in the executive, they don't like it. They don't like it at all. It's amazing how little has changed. The mindset is the same as both the colonial and the post-colonial, and it's amazing. These are young people. They are our peers, but they are
still fighting the same fight.
Absolutely, it's amazing. Sometimes it's exasperating when you look at who it is that you are fighting, and there are people who understand, or you should expect that they understand. But some of them, I look at Uhuru Kenyatta and I ask myself, what century is this man living in? Quite frankly, his mindset, the way he thinks, it's like he never grew out of his father's coat. You know? It's amazing.
I totally agree with you on that one. I've always said this. It's very unfortunate that we have a president who likes throwing tantrums like a kid who's been denied a sweet.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, Baba, you wanted this sweet and I've not given you. Baba, cry, Baba. So he comes and he huffs and he puffs and he blows hot and cold. And then he goes back and sips something and just continues with life like nothing happened. You know, it's
incredible. Just the sort of personality that has unfolded, particularly in the last sort of couple of, maybe I would say, the last several months. You saw the signs before that he's an intolerant person. I don't know how it is in this day and age, and especially how he came to power, that he expected to exercise absolute power. And I remember writing a column in 2014 and pointing out to him, you know, one of the things that the new constitution has done, and the whole change throughout the 90s, and you saw it also happen to Moi, as multi-party took root, you know, more competitive politics, open society, a lot of democratic space, which the new constitution sort of consolidated, is that it changed the character of the presidency and of the kind of leadership and power of the presidency from authority to influence. Really, what you really should be looking at. But and I remember writing and saying, "Today, my friend, you don't have the authority that you think you do." And this thing of trying to exercise authority by force and writing executive orders, many of them unconstitutional, that's the wrong way to go. All you have is really a pulpit. And you better learn how to try and sort of, you have a lot of convening power. But what you use that convening power for is influencing people. Not forcing them or not sort of giving them orders, because you don't have the power to give them orders and they will not obey you. We stopped obeying sort of power a long time ago.
So he has a kanu hangover.
He's a serious kanu hangover. And I think it goes all the way. I think somehow subliminally, Uhuru expected to govern like his father.
Oh, yeah.
Right, maybe he always looked forward to it.
Yeah, I think maybe
so his father and he was like,
in his mind, because he grew up in that court where he saw that everybody around, because his father was a sort of larger than life figure. I think last night or 2 days ago we sort of had a sort of family gathering of sorts, just one of these social things. And I don't know how the conversation ended up about recollecting the day Kenyatta died, Jomo Kenyatta died, and obviously many of the people, and one of my sort of relatives, he was a journalist, so he was one of the first to know, and he was narrating how he then went to tell he decided to go home up country and tell people, because he got to know very early in the morning. He arrived at home and everybody was going on, and he told people, Kenyatta has died, and they were wailing, and what's going to happen now? And
the village.
Yeah.
People believe there was gonna not be, there was
It's
never
like the
gonna be
world
live.
had ended, I remember it was the first time ever. We were on school holiday. It was August. And I was sitting outside. I remember quite clearly that I was sitting outside reading a book, as you do when you're on school vacation. And my father came home early before lunch, which was, I'd never seen him at home on a work day before 6. And he didn't talk to anybody.
A very sad man.
He was not sad. He was a bit sort of like in shock, and he went into the house and he didn't come out for a while, and he came back, I think, after his mind had calmed down and sort of thought, okay, now something very, very has happened and that kind of thing. So, but that's the point, that was how it was. And so to see, you get the sense, for those of us who, at least, I was young, but old enough to be, I was in secondary school, so you're old enough to sort of recollect those sort of things, that you look at Uhuru and I think this man is trying to be his father, and that seems to be what's driving him. And of course he cannot be. And it's not just now. He started quite early, and it's grown and grown and grown and grown, and it's very unfortunate that he's now sort of put us
flowered
in a situation where we are sort of preoccupied with things that we shouldn't.
Uh-huh.
It's very annoying.
All right. Even with your petition win, I'd really like to get the experience of what it means to push a different narrative in this country, especially that disagrees with what the system wants. What has been the challenge of you compiling this petition and even the whole initiative? What are some of the things, bottlenecks, that you've come through as you deal with this? You've mentioned judiciary and the almost lack of independence thereof. What are the other things that you felt has really crippled your efforts to drive a different conversation?
I guess that's not something easy for me to be able to talk to, because I guess we sort of sit at different points. We've always driven different conversations against the.
So you're used to it. It's a familiar territory.
It's not just familiar territory. It's just what is exasperating is that we believed we had won these battles, at least in terms of winning the battle, in terms of at least the intellectual battle as to what kind of governance we ought to have. Okay, because we went through this, we started with the multi-party. Of course, it was a big battle. Many people had fought for this before us. Then you had this situation in the early 90s where lots of forces, global, local, converged and said, look, one-party states are no longer tenable. And there was quite a fight back, including from KANU, including from people like Mwai Kibaki and others. We then went through that. And then it became quite apparent after our first multi-party elections that there was a lot more than that. And I remember we really started this conversation that we need to overhaul the constitutional infrastructure. Around 1995, I remember, in fact, going to a meeting in 96, a retreat which was organized by Kibudha Kibwana and Willy Mutunga in 1996, and a couple of people. We weren't that many, we were about 7 or 8 people. And we said, look, I think we need to find a way of making the constitutional discourse the next big agenda in the country. And it started like that. And of course, it took a while. In 1997, we had this big bust-up around whether no reforms, no election campaign, focusing particularly on creating a level playing field. But still, the debate around the Constitution was quite highly contested, even after we managed to push and get NAC to run on a platform of a new constitution within 100 days. By then, there had been a lot of contestations with tribe of Win. Moi had tried to take over the process. So it was a highly sort of contested process. And as soon as again, some people started turning around. The very people who had committed, the people around Kibaki, they started turning around and said, no, it's not the constitution. It was Moi who was the problem. Bishuki was one of the big proponents of that. And so there has always been a sort of status quo constituency that believed actually that there was nothing wrong with the political system and the governance system that we have because it favors them. They are products of it. Yeah, they've always been there. So the thing which really they tried when we pushed the thing, we had the bombers process, and what did they do? They pulled the rug from under that. They went to Kilifi, did something which looks similar to what Uhuru and Raila are doing now, and brought out this sort of Kilifi draft, or to call it the Wako draft, which was defeated. And if you look at it, it was really to restore, to create the semblance of a new constitution without it actually changing very much. Okay, and that's why it was rejected. Like devolution, there was a very strong devolution proposals in the Bomas draft, but they went and watered that down completely. There was a sort of proposal, I don't remember many of the other things, but they were really very much along the lines of the things that this BBI is trying to restore. So the thing, then of course it failed. And from there we had all the way to the 2007 election, what happened, the post-election violence. So that is what, then it's the, what do you call it, the agreement that came out of that, the National Accord. The National Accord is the one which made doing a new constitutional imperative. It was not the direct will of those people. So we get a new constitution, but I don't know whether many people recall that, for instance, on the issue of the judiciary and on the issue of reforming the provincial administration, Kibaki started backtracking immediately. He tried to appoint a chief justice, which did not conform with the constitution. And actually, you had a case. People went to court immediately. And so there was quite a few, not too many. I think there were 2 or 3, in fact, constitutional cases between 2010, the promulgation and the election, where already the system, as you might want to view it, for lack of a better word, was already fighting rearguard action. Okay, then you get an election, which you thought the election would now usher in now full implementation of the Constitution. So in a sense, the exasperation on my part, and those of us who are having to go back to the trenches to do this, is that we have to fight this. It's like we have to fight this thing all our lives. Wow. And against fellow Kenyans. Like, what are they protecting? And it just doesn't realize just how entrenched these sort of colonial political class, the privileged class, just how entrenched it is, and that is going to fight progressive change for forever.
By all means.
Yeah, it's by all means. They're not giving up. Even when you see the kind of situation that gave birth to the new constitution and show how this country could actually unravel quite easily, they won't give up. Because that's where they are taking us again. Because if you look at now, we are heading to another election which looks as like it's likely to be as toxic and as divisive as probably 2007.
It could even some people even argue that it could even be worse.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, we hope not, and we hope we can forestall that.
Because I think Kenyans are pressed from all sides. The economy is sitting tough on them. The social fabric has continued to disintegrate. The leadership as well has continued to almost, disintegrate on Kenyans. it could be worse, because the other time probably we are fighting over an election. Today we are fighting over economic crimes that we feel the Wananchi has been taken against, and also the political, alienation that we are seeing in the country. But anyway, that's left to see. Now, the issue of your petition, I would like you to break it down for us. What was it all about? What were the issues that you were raising in your petition? And yesterday's ruling, what does it mean going forward, especially for BBI?
Our petition was filed in September, long before BBI. And it was, although it was informed partly on where BBI was headed, it was predicated on the fact that there have already been quite a lot of attempts to change fairly fundamental provisions of the Constitution. I don't remember the exact number, but we listed in the petition, I think 13 or 14. Some of them bills were alive in Parliament, which were trying to change fairly fundamental things. And it goes back to the thing that, look, there are some assumptions that by the time the country goes through such a process, and the constitution-making process was very elaborate, that certain constitutional norms are taking root. Yeah, you don't expect to sort of pass a constitution, to go through a kind of process, agree on fundamentals of rule of law and democracy, separation of powers, independence of judiciary, and all of that, really the fundamental tenets of constitution, of democratic constitutionalism. And then shortly thereafter, you see people trying to pull to sort of claw back. So there's been a lot of attempt to claw back. You saw some proposed security laws, which were really very serious clawback on the Bill of Rights. Okay, so it's something we've sort of been deliberating and said, look, now what we are seeing coming is almost a full-scale assault on things that were already going. So what we then put the petition is to expand our constitutional jurisprudence by saying, asking the court to adopt something called a basic structure principle of the Constitution, that there are some aspects of the Constitution that cannot be changed. You cannot by amendment. Okay, because an amendment suggests a small change, an improvement, which is progressive, small, maybe to get out of things which are changing and that kind of thing. Amendment cannot use to change the basic structure of the Constitution. Some very fundamental things. The other principle which is in it is what you call a principle of unconstitutional constitutional amendments, that even process matters. The process by which the Constitution is changed has to have legitimacy, yeah, and has to conform to certain norms about sovereignty of the people and that kind of thing. It's a bit of so to give an illustration, I'll give an illustration which is not Kenyan. I don't know whether you're familiar with this history. A couple of years ago, quite a while back, Algeria is an Islamic country, but with a secular constitution. Okay, many Islamic countries have theocratic constitutions. Algeria, because of its colonial history, has a secular constitution. So a couple of years ago, an Islamic party, during this rise of Islamic parties and kind of politics, an Islamic party ran on elections in Algeria on a platform of installing Islamic law, which is basically to abolish the secular constitution and democracy, establish a theocracy. And they actually won the election.
Wow.
But there was a crisis because then the military intervened. Said, look, you cannot use democracy to abolish democracy. There are limits to what you can do.
Yeah.
You cannot, that is, so what I said, you cannot change the basic structure of the state using the process that has allowed you to run for election, and then you abolish that process for anybody else. So you use the process to win
breaking
an
the
election.
bridge after you cross.
Yes, you cross the bridge and then you break it. Okay. Let me give you another example, which is Kenyan. We have a provision in the constitution which protects Kafi courts. Okay, for family law of the Islamic community. Now, this agreement was part of the deal that enabled the coastal strip, which was a separate British protectorate, to become part of Kenya. And it was signed between Kenyatta and the Sultan of Zanzibar. Said, okay, we have no problem with this part being integrated with the Kenyan colony at independence, even though it was part of the Sultanate of Zanzibar, on condition that certain sort of Islamic, cultural, blah, 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 are protected. And it's been very contentious. Even when we were doing the new constitutions, there were some sort of Christian type people who said that it should not be there, but at any rate it got protected. Now, it is not inconceivable that somebody can come and whip up all sorts of religious sentiment and political whatever, and using majority, because Kenya is a majority Christian country, and then have a popular initiative to remove that provision. But in my view, that provision is part of the basic structure, not just of the constitution, but of law, but constitution of Kenya as a country. It was there at the beginning. It was a covenant which was entered to at the beginning. So I would argue that's part of the basic structure of the constitution, that you cannot use majoritarianism to remove. So what we then said, okay, we want the court to asking the court, and this has happened in other countries, this jurisprudence is something which has happened in India, in I think quite several countries, actually Bangladesh, quite a few other countries, is to establish that if there is a constitutional amendment that is proposed, it will be evaluated on whether that constitutional amendment is an assault on the basic structure of the constitution, of the things that Kenyans have fundamentally agreed are part of our basic governance good norm, and that somebody cannot just come and whip up political sentiment and have those sort of wished away. You saw Trump trying to abolish aspects of the American Constitution. So it can happen. Yeah.
And it's quite interesting that it's only the people sitting on power who always trying to be mischievous. Before they get there, they are very nice people. We'll give you a new constitution. We will strengthen governance until they get there. That's when they realize now they need to restore the default settings of authority and dictatorship. All right, what does that mean then for BBI going forward? Your petition yesterday.
You see, then what happens is that we filed our petition before BBI. And subsequently, when BBI came about, many other people filed petitions. So of different nature, but related. So what the courts did, the Chief Justice did, as courts will normally do, is to consolidate these petitions and set up one bench. We had requested that we get a 3 or 5 judge bench. We sort of said this, and they said, okay, all these petitions should not consolidate because they're addressing the same matter. The reason why the courts do that, other than efficiency, is also the fact that you do not want related cases on the same matters being heard by different judges at the same time who may make contradictory rulings.
Sure.
Yeah, because these things are
different people have different minds,
and because you said judicial precedent, you ask which of these rulings actually constitutes judicial precedent. So they've consolidated the cases. So now we have 6 petitions being under that petition. What happened yesterday is that one of the petitions, among the petitions, was a request to issue what they call in the court conservatory orders, which is to say that things which jeopardize this the ruling that be given in this petition should be held in abeyance until the ruling is given. So in this case, the thing that could jeopardize the ruling, the effects of the ruling is a referendum. And the basis on which they said at any rate, because quite a lot of public money would be expended in a referendum, and the court feels duty bound to protect public resources, and therefore they said public money should not be spent on a referendum, while there is a court case whose ruling could render what they are trying to do unconstitutional.
Or illegal.
Yeah.
All right. All these, the petitions are under initiative that you are running, Linda Katiba. Before I throw it to Lucia, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce Linda Katiba initiative. What is it all about? What are their aspirations? And maybe how can Kenyans of goodwill be part of it if they wish to be?
Linda Katiba is, in a way, I already have done that. Because I said, we spent years, and many people spent years, sort of advocating and fighting for and working towards achieving a new constitutional dispensation, which we have now. This constitution has already survived 10 years against the assaults that I talked about. The independent constitution wasn't so lucky. It survived only 1 year, at most. Okay? So, we, I guess, as I said, presumed that having been passed with such a majority, a majority constitution, over 2/3 people voted for it and all of that, you have people who want to protect it. The constitution is supposed to be the fundamental, and we should be fighting our politics on.
But we all have a common ground, which is
we have a common ground, which is the constitution. Okay, but we should now be fighting about policy. How should we do the economy? Should you prioritize this or the other? But there are some basics that, like civil and political rights, like democracy, like free and fair elections, like separation of powers. That there are basic rules of the game on which we are agreed. What we are now learning and what we are seeing with this BI is that the constitutional order is actually contested. There are people, you have heard people argue, say, no, we think democracy is too problematic. Maybe what we need is a benevolent dictatorship. You've heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. There are people who actually think that the judiciary is too activist and it should be controlled by the executive, or at least should be brought to whatever. You have seen an assault on parliament that we now don't know what is opposition and what is government, that these things happen. So we then come to the realization that what should be the basic framework, how do you saying, that on which we are agreed, is actually something which is politically contested. So then we say there gotta then be a political platform of the people who are for the constitution as a political platform, because it's no longer the basic sort of norm we think it is, because we have to fight politically the people who are against the constitution. Yeah? We have people who are making it their politics.
To fight the constitution.
To fight the constitution. So you got to have people who make it their politics to defend the constitution. Yeah? Because they are saying, and you ask yourself, because they are quite clear. If you look at the process in particular that they've gone through, is a very personalized, very partisan process, very exclusionary. Yeah, 2 people decide that they are going to start a constitution. They don't even. I mean, the problem which we had, was a problem of electoral fraud, and it's not new. It is simply the problem of incumbents who do not accept that they should leave power by dint of losing an election, or by that power should come from the vote. And it's not new. You saw Jomo Kenyatta, who was an executive president, never faced voters. Because in the first election, it was under a parliamentary system. Kanu won sort of the parliamentary system. He became prime minister as leader of Kanu, and thereafter changed the constitution to a presidential system, but never faced a competitive election until he died. Moi took over. Took from there. He went one further. They created a de jure one-party state, so they eliminated competition. In 1992, we brought back multi-party. Moi, the system, you could see, they fought their way and said, okay, Moi has to start anew, whatever, of 2 terms. And you see, this is a problem. Since then, you see, it is a mid-term election problem. First, Moi, okay, a problem, then 97, then 2002, when he was unable to, there was a few attempts to change the constitution, they didn't work, to remove the term limit. 2002, when it was end of term, that was the election. We elect Kibaki, who people say is a gentleman. You know, he cannot do these things, not like Moi. 1997, they decide, no, Kibaki cannot leave. By dint of losing an election, he gets sworn in at night. They do all those sort of crazy Tharaka-Nithi things. And he refuses to leave. And we end up with this situation. End of term, he accepts and he leaves, and we have a peaceful election. Uhuru comes into power. Mid-term, same problem. Okay, but now we have a situation where, from the look of things, you wonder, why is Uhuru campaigning? That in fact, I said this, so Uhuru seems to have decided, let's get rid of the system altogether and find a way of staying in power. Because my conviction is that this really is no different. What we are seeing as BBI and this assault on the constitution is no different from what we are seeing in Uganda, what we are different from what we are seeing in Tanzania. I think these despots have now decided to stop pretenses that they are observing this democratic sort of ritual. They have decided they can dispense with it. And they're really trying to restore what one scholar called electoral authoritarianism. This is because nowadays they cannot do military coups or one-party states. So what they've learned to do now is to have a dictatorship, but which has democratic rituals. Yeah, you have
a soft dictatorship.
It's not soft. Museveni's is not soft. What it means is that you have reached this ritual where election results are predetermined. As opposition, you are supposed to participate and accept to lose so that you can give it legitimacy. So you have to run, and then they give you 30% or 35%, and you accept.
Unless they've given you something.
Yes, and you accept so that they need people pretending to be opposition.
Yeah. But in reality, they are not.
But in reality, they are in control of everything. And I think that is the system that...
That's a new strategy now.
That's a new strategy. That's what he wants to do. We don't know what role he wants to play in that new system, but he wants to play a role. He wants to restore a dictatorship which has a facade of democracy.
So we have not yet seen the hand of Uhuru over the last 2
No. We will see. We will not let him succeed. But when you look at, you ask yourself, why is a president who should be retiring campaigning? Why is he competing with the people who are the ones who should be campaigning, who should be
running for office?
Who are running for office. He's not running for office. Why is he out there? He should be taking a backseat and let them sort of compete. No, but he's actually the most active. Okay, so clearly he does not intend to go anywhere. If you look at what has happened to BBI, It started by looking like it was a Trojan horse for Raila. But it has, over time, been pulled back. You can see it's been pulled back. And if you look at it, it is now a Uhuru project. Raila is just somebody who I think finds himself stuck in there. And he doesn't know. I think he's just trying to sort of save face or something. I don't know why he's staying. Obviously, probably because he's trying to find how he thinks he can still maneuver. I think he got himself trapped in there.
Natumia tu line ya Safaricom kwa sababu ya M-Pesa.
Yeah, something like that. So the point is, so back to Linda Katiba. It is a call to arms, so to speak, politically, because we are telling Kenyans that you now, younger generation, you had assumed that we fought for these things, we have established democracy, we have opened political space. Yours now is to enjoy the fruits of this new dispensation. And in a way, Linda Katiba, I should tell you now, it doesn't look that way. You also looks like you are going to have to fight. You are going to have to fight to protect your freedoms, to prevent your freedoms, political freedoms from taken away, to make the vote count, because the ultimate objective of this thing is to make the vote not count. That is the biggest problem with our politics. It is not constitution. They have conflated all these things. But the thing they do not want is power which is exercised by the people. They want power which they exercise themselves without any unfettered discretion.
Yeah, the source and the hand.
Yeah. The idea that that people the vote, either through the vote and also in between, that you see the things which they really annoy them, the requirement that people have to participate in policy processes, all the things that actually put power in the hands of the people. Those are the things they don't want.
Yeah.
They want absolute power. And so this contest between rulers who want absolute power and people demanding that they exercise their power and their sovereignty, that contest looks like it's far from over. Right. And therefore, Linda Katiba is a platform for telling people this contest is not over. All of you now have to get into the trenches. Those of you who want to enjoy political rights, civil liberties, and have a say in how the country progresses. This is you have to join in this fight. Yeah, you're gonna have to earn it. Yeah, right? You're gonna have to work for it. Yeah.
Before I roll it over again, Lucia, maybe I'll give you an opportunity to chime in.
Yeah. So I hear you. Thank you so much for the work that Linda Katiba is doing. We really appreciate the effort. I mean, people have to come out and do something. You cannot just sit in a corner somewhere complaining about things. So that's a very proactive move that Linda Katiba has taken. Now, as you sip water, the president has said in the past that he will revisit the judiciary. We know there's been a tussle where he has refused to appoint these 41 judges. Mm-hmm. I'm told there are now 40.
40. One passed on here.
Oh my God, one had to die. In this country, someone always has to die for things to happen. But you see, even that still hasn't happened. Here's the thing. He stands and he says he's on the front line of the war against corruption, yet he's weakening the institution that is supposed to take care of that. So many court orders have been given that this government has ignored. I think someone did a sum on Twitter, I can't quite remember, and they said since 2014, this government has ignored almost 530-something court orders. Now, the court order that has been given to Linda Katiba, how are we sure? Because now reggae is supposed to stop. These super spreader events that are happening are not supposed to be happening anymore. It's supposed to, everything BBI is supposed to come to a halt with this court order. But they really don't even seem like it's, unajua senye, you're doing something and a fly just comes and you whisk it off. It looks like the government does that a lot with court orders. So what happens now?
First of all, let me clarify. The judiciary tries very much not to interfere with the legislature. Mm-hmm. So they did not tell the legislatures to stop.
Ah, okay.
But they told the legislatures, take notice that although we cannot interfere with your debates, there is a likelihood that the outcome of what you are doing could be declared unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. That's the most they could do. Mm-hmm. In a way, it's telling them, you even if you proceed with this process, it could become an exercise in futility. Yeah. So that's a conservatory order. Hopefully, it ends up in rulings that protect the Constitution. It is conceivable that you can have a referendum as long as whatever the court rules that it constitutes protecting the Constitution's basic structure and various other things. I am not familiar with all the other 6 petitions because they all sort of make very different issues. There is very different issues, many of them. Ours is basically saying, we're asking the court, can we declare that the basic structure doctrine is applicable in the Kenyan Constitution? We actually do have a ruling in, what was the case? It was before the election. Mm-hmm. There was a case, I think, to do with MP salaries. Yeah. And in that ruling, there is an indication what lawyers and judges, what lawyers call obiter. It's a statement made by the judge, in an observation in passing, but it's not part of the ruling, but an opinion expressed. There is an expression of opinion that this doctrine of the basic structure of the Constitution should apply, is applicable to Kenya. It's in a ruling in one of the constitutional cases that came up before the election. So our whatever is that then they will rule that yes, the doctrine is applicable to Kenya. That means anything that comes out of BBI then becomes subject to the question as to whether it is interfering with the basic structure of the Constitution. We don't know which things the court will grant, if it does grant. Some of the others are on process. For example, the question as to whether the popular initiative route is available to the state, because this is very clearly a state process. My view that it isn't. So they've gone about it the wrong route. They could have gone about it purely by legislative initiative. This is preserved for citizens. So there are many, many things. We don't actually know which the courts will find as an uphold and which ones they will not. So it is quite possible to have, but whatever the case, if it does uphold many of those things, I actually do not see how the bill in its current form could survive. So it would then be rendered sort of nugatory, so to speak. But the question as to whether the judiciary, the executive can ignore, it can. And in fact, my own sense of BBI is that it is not intention. Its purpose, if you see, it's very unpopular. And in fact, you almost get the sense that they are provoking hostility against it deliberately. So you ask yourself, why would they be provoking hostility against their own thing? Because my own sense is this is an impunity exercise. Okay? What Uhuru is looking for is to rig BBI through, force it through by some process and get away with it. Then he establishes the president. Because what he really wants is to open up the constitution. And if he can open up with this kind of brutal process, it is in fact that very act, that is the act of subverting the constitution. Because you have disrespected it, you have shown it, you have shown contempt. His objective is to show contempt, is to give the constitution a contempt card. Okay? Once he gives the constitution a contempt card, he has opened the door. There is nothing to stop him then even bringing another amendment, bribing MCAs and whoever it requires, bullying whichever judges get into his way, for example, to remove term limit.
Term limit, yes. And extend his presidency.
Okay? And then, having established that you can do this, then he can do a Magufuli type election in 2022 and install himself as president without term limit. I would not be surprised
Eternal president.
if that is the kind of megalomania that's going on in his head or among the heads of his advisors. Because these despots have learned that they can do it and get away with it. Museveni, I don't think Museveni needed to be that brutal with Bobby Wine. But it was done to show iwe funzo
Kwa wengine.
that I am in charge here, and anybody who dares to challenge me, this is what they're gonna get. Same thing with Magufuli in Tanzania. Yeah. And now I think the purpose of Magufuli, that kind of reign of terror that he's pushing in Tanzania, is, people say, as a precursor to again removing term limit.
Wow.
He wants to bully the Tanzanian parliament into amending the constitution to remove term limit in the forthcoming election, which is he's imposed a term limit on him. So we should not look at Ethiopia, same thing. Yeah. So we should not look at ourselves in isolation.
Yeah.
And I think so. We need to look at this process as an assault on the constitution and on democracy. Yeah. And Uhuru has shown very clearly that he's no Democrat. Yeah? He has shown very clearly. So why he's doing it every day? He's running a pilot in Nairobi of militarizing Nairobi, removing the whatever, fortunately for the pretext that Sonko is whatever. But if you look at it, Sonko was already out of office as per the court. He
had been kept out of office. Anyway.
He's been kept out of office by the corruption trial. Yeah. What was the point of impeaching him? If it didn't broke down fix, he wasn't there. Okay, but it's part of this show of might, and of course, part of it is also business, because he was getting in the way of NMS getting access to money, and this money, NMS is basically a project management office for this Northland city. It's not running Nairobi. It is actually facilitating this Uhuru family project.
Thank you for saying it.
So you can already see, and again, to sort of like on upon your question of corruption, for Uhuru and for the Kenyatta family, and for our political class in particular, the Kenyan political class, which is a bit unique in this region, this absolute power is not an end in itself. This absolute power is their instrument for primitive accumulation of wealth by using this, which is how their wealth has been acquired. And the Kenyattas really are the epitome of that. If you look at what Uhuru has done, he's impoverished the country and enriched his family. Yeah, the poorer the country gets, the richer his family becomes. And you can see, so why do they want to stay in power? They want to stay in power to continue expanding their wealth. So it is, so when you talk about fighting corruption, Uhuru cannot fight corruption. He wants absolute power to do corruption.
He wants corruption to work for him.
He wants corruption to work for him. And also to have the exclusive franchise for corruption, for this sort of chronic capitalist sort of cartel economy. He wants to have the exclusive. He's basically a gang leader. Yeah, this is a sort of mafiosi sort of
a gangman.
Gang leader. So he wants to have the exclusive franchise so that he decides who it is, which of these are the minions, which of these are the sort of minor sort of bandits. He can give a franchise. You, Raila, you can loot Kisumu. You, Joho, you can loot the coast. Whoever, so Musalia, I'll give you a franchise for Western and sugar, and you can
loot
run
the sugar belt.
You can
all
loot
of
sugar.
it.
You can do sugar rackets, but don't touch this. That's the kind of thing that he wants to run. So that's what the absolute power is for. Yeah. So it is. To separate that from corruption is wrong. Its object is corruption.
It's one and the same.
Yeah, in the bottom line here is money and control, and they don't care for some reason. They think that you can continue impoverishing people, and you getting richer, a few of you, and that you can sustain it. It's unsustainable. It's been shown throughout history it's unsustainable. But somehow there's a certain myopia. These people, they sort of live in a bit of a sort of power echo chamber, which makes them think that they can actually get away with this.
And now that actually you've mentioned that the issue of amassing wealth and maybe impoverishing people, there's this conversation that actually a viewer has asked Ndii, can a class war ever happen? Personally, I've not seen any literature of it ever to have happened in the world. It's a work of vision created by Mr. Messi Mudavadi. I mentioned about impoverishing people. There's been the issue of Asla narrative that has been termed as illegal. It's actually almost getting illegal. And CIC that had told us they're going to ban it. And they're saying that it's going to cause a class war. What could inspire a class war and could ever be a class fight in a country?
I think this language of class war is deliberate incendiary language to try and delegitimize very legitimate politics and obvious. Democratic politics is organized around interests, correctly. If you look at the history of sort of current West, if you look at the West and democratic alignments, it is negotiation between the interest of capital and the interest of labor. So in fact, in the UK, there's one party called Labour and the party of capital called Conservatives. But they are really the party of capital. In fact, the Confederation of British Industry supports the Conservative Party, and the unions are members of the Labour Party. So it's interest groups of labour, and you can call it class politics because labour is predominantly working class, and the capitalists are predominantly the upper classes in that society. If you go to the US, you see the same thing. You see Republicans as the party of capital, and you see Democrats are the party of labor. All the unions support Democrats. Okay? So if you don't have politics organized around economic interests, if you're not able to organize politics around economic interests, unfortunately, the default is identity. Yeah? So if you're organized along ethnic or sectarian, religious type lines, okay? So the politics of economic interests, of whether they have class undertones or not, is actually progressive politics. That's how democratic politics works better, organized around economic interests. So we cannot decry tribal politics and then delegitimize the alternative. Because that's, so why they are delegitimate, you then realize that our political class is very aware that they use divide and rule, ethnic divide and rule, as the colonial people did, were very smart about it, that they inherited that tool, so as in fact to prevent the coalescence of class interests.
Across board.
Because what you see, what these people do is they divide us vertically. Okay? They divide us vertically. Kikuyu, Kalenjin, Kamba, and they tell her, I am representing your interests. But the interest of the rich Mkamba and the poor Mkamba are not the same. It's an illusion. The economic interests are not the same. So what the hustler narrative is doing is doing this horizontally, telling all the certain people, not necessarily poor, because they're not talking about poor. They're saying we have a system of political, a governance system here, which is based on entitlement and not enterprise. It's not based on work and what you are able to do. It is based on who you are and who you know. And the thing is, that is precisely the political system that the colonial administration in place, because these colonialists came here, they set up an economy and a colonial administration whose objective was to privilege the migrants. Okay? It was not based on how hard you work. How your quality of life and your benefits from the state and all those things were based on race. Okay? And it was actually an apartheid system with whites at the top, with Asians in the middle, and with Africans left out largely in what was called the native sort of economy and native reserves and native things. While if you look at the whites, they had better schools, Asians had slightly better schools, and Africans had the worst schools.
And then there we were.
And then whites had better hospital health care, Asians had also second-class hospitals, whites had first-class hospitals, Asians had second-class hospitals, and Africans had third-class hospitals. So that's the system we inherited. But instead of dismantling that system, so that you have a system based on equal opportunity, what we have had is preserve that system, and now the question that we negotiate is access to those privileges. Yeah? How do you get admitted into that privileged class? How do you get admitted into the privileged club? And the ticket these days is ethnic. And also being close to your ethnic chiefs. So we have an ethnic...
Omgadism.
Exactly. Ethnic patronage system. So proximity to these tribal leaders is what Kenyans fight for. To make sure that... and then hope that yours actually is the one who makes it to State House, at least not State House, to the next nearest office, and then he or she is able to control a couple of public agencies and is able to put these people there, and then you end up with this mtuetu thing. So, and that's the system that keeps people divided. So, this, sooner or later, the penny was going to drop on people that, wait a minute, the fundi there, and that other sort of person doing the kiosk there where we work, and the mechanic down there at the other end, our interests are the same. We want an economy which works. Yeah. And by the way, it is not a class thing. You see, even the economy, when you see entrepreneurs, sort of hardworking entrepreneurs who are trying to grow, and you see how hard they get hit. Yeah? You see what has happened to Tabitha Karanja, trying to break into that alcoholic beverages cartel, and many others. In fact, she's not the first one. It's not her. The first person to suffer that was a man called Kogoro. Kuguru started that whatever. There was a time he used to run something called Chibuku many years ago, before whatever, which was like a traditional brew that was killed. And then many years they tried something else, which was killed. And I think Jabida is the first one to actually break up. What is the thing? It is the East African breweries. The multinationals are in bed with our political class, and therefore they use that to suppress competition and local enterprise. We have seen the Kenyatta family, since Uhuru became finance minister, basically acquire the entire dairy processing. All the domestic entrepreneurs who had gone into dairy, they've been acquired. The only surviving ones are the public. It's Githunguri, which is a co-op, and they've not managed to do that, and KCC. But if you are a private individual, now, those private individuals, they're not poor, are they? No, but the hustler message resonates with them, because they know that you have this political system. So it's a cartel economy. Yeah? And that is exactly what the colonial system was. It was a colonial cartel where only businesses owned by whites could do particular things. You had Asians there allowed to trade and do particular things, and Africans left to their own devices.
They're only consumers.
They were actually very deliberate devices meant to keep African down. For example, I think it was up to the 1950s. Any money lent to an African exceeding 200 shillings was not enforceable. A loan exceeding 200 shillings to an African was not enforceable. So obviously you could not lend Africans more money than you could collect. And of course that limited their ability to raise money and build enterprise which competes with these guys.
All right.
So there is a very fundamental issue there. The reason, and it's interesting because you see the visceral reaction even of the so-called middle class against this hustler narrative, the Hurubal or whatever. And for me, so it tells me that they are also conscious that they are beneficiaries of this cartel economy, because then they are able to get a few jobs in some of these enterprises, and they want to protect those jobs, and they know that these enterprises. So if you look at actually the class, what you might call, it's not a class cleavage per se, because you don't have those kind of classes that you have in the West between labor and capital. But really, this is whatever between the what you might call, and which is now the dominant sector in this economy, what you might call the small businesses, including smallholder farmers, who actually work for themselves, and they're sort of really the and these cartels, this corporate cartel, the corporate state cartel sector, that whatever, which is trying to use the state to protect. And you've seen it, for instance, and throughout the 90s and Kibaki, we actually managed to bring down those barriers to entry, which allowed many other people to get into business. You've seen Uhuru putting them back up. For example, all using things like these non-tariff barriers to block people from importing, talking about substandard, standard things, and all those people who used to import things from China, breaking up all those sort of businesses. So there is actually, I call it, when I'm around to speak economics, so the actual class divide in Kenya, which is now what is taking shape, is what I call big C and small c. The big capital and small capital. The people who have a little capital and the people who have a lot of capital. And the people who have a lot of capital want to keep the people who have a little capital out of business and from competing with them.
All right, Lucia.
So I my last question. When you Google countries like China, Canada, Finland, all these Nordic Scandinavian countries, all these impressive economies, the one thing that stands out when you Google them is they are a hub for something. There's an agricultural hub, there's an economic hub, there's a manufacturing hub, there's an exporting hub, there's a sports hub. I feel like in this country we've never had a vision. What do we want to be? In as much as we are saying now the hustler narrative becomes an alternative, but then what are we really building towards? I recently watched a documentary talking about the history of the House of Windsor. Apparently, they don't have a drop of English blood. They're Germans.
Yeah, they are.
They are fully blooded Germans. But then
Prince Philip is Greek.
Yeah, but you see, Philip is Greek. You're right, Philip is Greek. And you see, they've ruled Brits for decades. It's because someone had a vision for the House of Windsor. They wanted the House of Windsor to last for 100, 1,000 years, and they made plans towards that. China comes up with a 50-year plan, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. They have a vision. I think the United States also has a vision. They want to continue being the world power, So when Trump comes in, and he wants to jeopardize the vision that Americans have for America, then it's really quick for them to say, you know what, it's for country. It's not for a person. So off you go, bye-bye. It's been good, but go home. I feel like we don't have a vision that we are working towards as a country. So then any Tom, Dick, and Harry comes, and they start a project, whatever that project is, and when their term ends, the project dies with them. So we don't have politics of progression, we just have politics of succession. I just succeed you. Oh, you had started building a highway that was going sijui where, and I feel like, highway, Ndii doesn't look like good, so I go start building my own somewhere else. Like there's no continuity that shows us that we are working towards an end goal. Like, really, what is our end goal? How do we get there?
Countries have no end goal. Society's mission is to exist. Now, the problem you're describing is a perspective that you see when your world view and your narratives are shaped by a political class which has no legitimacy. No political legitimacy. And that's a big problem with African. It's one of our core problems in Africa that we just talked about them. The only reason why these people are in power is because they opportunistically got to the top of the colonial system.
Yeah.
They are not the authentic leaders of the people. So they use development as a legitimizing ideology. The reason why you have to allow us to govern you is because we will bring development. So we keep talking about visions and showing you we will be like China, we will be like the West, we will be all manner of things.
Buying, selling hope.
Selling hope, which they cannot deliver. Because at any rate, it is not what societies are about. If you look at traditional, like you talk about traditional societies, I think my favorite example in Africa, which people find quite controversial, is Swaziland, which is still has retained its traditional governance system. Or if Buganda had been a country, it would be a traditional governance system. Buganda, yes. Now, the Kabaka does not derive his legitimacy from delivering development to Buganda.
Delivering roads and railways.
Yes, he does. It does not threaten his position that he has not done development this year. Neither does the king of Eswatini. Is threatened because
he only comes out once in a year to look at girls.
He comes once a year to look at girls and marries one of them, and that is their traditional system. If you're saying the traditional system, and even the hounds of Windsor and those, they do not derive from legitimacy from developing their countries. They are the authentic leaders of the people. So what is the leadership of the people? It is an institution which is accepted, which maintains order, which resolves conflicts, which convenes people and does all manner of things. Swati can wake up one day and decide we are changing our name of our country from Swaziland to Swatini because that's what it is in Swazi, and they do that and all kind of things. So that's an organic polity. Okay, it doesn't have to sell people these mirages of development. If you then ask, then how does what is development? Yeah, if you don't have this preoccupation that Uhuru is in power, he must build things to be legitimate, then he indebts the country. If he had done absolutely nothing,
you've not been that.
We would actually be totally fine. People would be getting on with their lives. They would be... development is done by people. And it's about people. If you look at the countries with the highest quality of life, even among those you are calling development, they are the ones with very little drama. You don't hear about them. New Zealand. You see New Zealand popping up the other day because it seemed to have done a very good job of managing COVID compared to all these countries we claim to be very powerful, very high. What is New Zealand? It's an agricultural economy in the backwaters, far from anybody else. Kondo, and they play rugby, but they're a good, they are sort of the society. If you go to South America, you find the few of the successful countries there is Chile and Uruguay and other places which don't really make waves. Central America, Dominican Republic, places which don't really make play. Even if you go to Europe, it's the same thing, it's the Swedens and the Scandinavian countries, the Denmarks, countries which actually don't make waves. So if you find countries which make waves, that's a bad sign. It means their leaders are preoccupied with power and not with the interests and well-being of
selling narrative.
And selling narratives so that they can project power. It's all about projecting power. If you look at China is fundamental problem. Whatever is megalomania, projecting global power. And Chinese citizens are beginning to ask, these resources being expended to project global power, why aren't we being spent back at home? Yeah, but of course, because of the repressive nature of the Chinese Communist Party, they are not able to get that out. So that elite narrative preoccupation, it's to me the symptom of illegitimate leadership and insecure elite, and which owes they know that they owe their position to privilege. They're living better than the rest of the people, and they are not doing anything. So they sell these whatever. So, and you see that the Kenyan elite believes that it is their responsibility they think that they are the ones they think it's a meritocracy. They have deluded themselves that if you go to university and get a job in a parastatal, that you are now successful meritocratically. Yet that parastatal is living off the taxes of poor people and delivering zero services, zero value to society. But we create this fiction that it's a meritocracy. It isn't. It is a lottery. What you have in a country like this is a lottery. The only reason why you are sitting here is because you are lucky enough not to die of some childhood measles.
Or polio.
Or whatever.
Malaria.
Like some other kid was probably brighter than you or me.
Yeah.
So it's a lottery. So those who have won the lottery have to justify themselves. They have to justify themselves and explain, we are going to deliver. We are going to make you look like Japan in no time.
I hear you, but we need to revive our economy as a country. We are fighting for a constitution, yet we do not have constitutionalism in this country. Like, Kenyans don't even understand why this document has importance and value. What kind of conversations then do we need to get us going in the right direction? Because I think in order for us to focus our energies as a country in the right place, we do need that vision. We need to see where we are going,
but
and
it is
plan.
Not.
It's not short term.
No. I don't think we need visions of some future which we look like some other country, or have built edifices, or we have bullet trains. It's a lot of nonsense.
No, here is where I'll agree
what
with
we
you.
need is a vision of a society at peace with itself. Okay? How does a society become at peace with itself? A society where everybody is valued. Okay? A people-centered government. Yeah? So that the first and the most important requirement, I think, of any society to judge the quality of society is the dignity enjoyed by the citizens. Human dignity. Basic human dignity. It doesn't require development.
So we need to get the basics right even before we talk about
it doesn't require development.
We need to get the values right.
Every Kenyan can be accorded dignity. There's nobody. We do not require development not to have people living in slums. We can do that now. Okay?
Yeah.
We do not require development to criminalize, to stop criminalizing poverty. Yeah, and the fact that people who are making a living because they have not been afforded any opportunity are being chased around by city askaris, and so that we remove them, so that we put pavements and things so that we look like a European city, so that Cabro works, so that the elite can feel that Nairobi, they can feel that Nairobi looks like whatever. But what you have done is you have taken the people you have marginalized and excluded, and marginalized them further. You have hidden them away, and where they cannot be seen, so that you can say, "Wow, our city looks like Paris."
Like you say, when you have jiggers, you say, "Let's buy new shoes."
Yes,
let's not even jiggers.
So,
let's buy new shoes.
So that's saying we need to ask ourselves. So it's fundamentally what is it that makes? And if you look at this constitution, that's precisely what it says.
Yeah.
It is about a transformation of society which puts people at the center of governance and of everything that is done in the public realm. Empowers them and puts them at the center of it. We have, if you ask me, all the development that we should be concerned in this country by now, economic development and social development, is in Article 43 of the Constitution. Okay? Those are the first, because our first duty is to obey the Constitution.
That's the first business of the day.
So if it is in there, we should obey. So it says people have a right to health care, to education, to clean water, to housing and sanitation, to social security, to various things. We don't need these edifices that we are building. We have enough resources in this country to achieve that progressively within 5 to couple of years.
Then we start building.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still have any comments.
Daktari said we don't need a vision, and then he said the vision that I had for this country. Basically it's just having a people-centered Kenya and these people living dignified life. It's basically socio-economic justice and rights. That's the kind of Kenya that I want to know. And now that he has said that, then it becomes easier to get a roadmap of how to get to a Kenya that looks like that. Now, here's what I want to agree with you. I totally agree with you on your example of Eswatini. this is the thing I'm ever telling people. You know, when the, I don't know, what do you call your bahengele? The clan elders, the group of clan elders.
Yeah.
Do you know, if I was to make a mistake right now, and a Supreme Court judge summoned me, I'd think of running away. But if I'm there from the bahengele summoned me,
You go.
hata naweza kopa pesa, I take the
You
next
go.
flight.
You
Yeah, you
go.
know, traditionally, before these white people
The
came
legitimacy,
and
yes.
told us our hair is bad and unprofessional, and told us our skin is ugly, and told us all these negative things about us, we actually had democracies and economies that were thriving. I mean, who has replicated the pyramids ever since? Nobody.
One of the things.
So we
that
need
I
to go
find,
back to the spirit of Ubuntu.
But let's talk about vision. One of the things I find really we need to disabuse. I don't know how we get those cobwebs out of people's head. Is that development is modernization.
Agreed.
It's a colonial thing, which I learned when I was a student, sort of 30 or plus years ago, probably closer to 40, about this sort of conflation of development and modernization by the educated elite, the people that Gideon Butiso wrote a book he called us Omi. It's a very nice good book called Politics and Society, something we used to read in political sociology. And when I listen to some of the discourses around these hustler narratives and the wheelbarrow, I realize just how entrenched, how people have internalized that they are unable to recognize just dignity as a fundamental development outcome. They ask, so development to them is some very peculiar idea of everybody in society escaping, becoming elite, escaping manual tasks. So there are no more,
and driving Mercedes Benz.
yes, there are no more sweepers. There are no more people who clean toilets. There are no more people who are. And I remember now having to tell people, good people, there is no society like that. You know, it is not all about escaping these unpleasant tasks, things, jobs that have to be done in society. After all, many Africans go to the West to do those jobs. You know, the very same things. They leave their education, they put their education aside, and they go to the US to work in nursing homes and go to Europe to sweep the streets and all manner of things. But we have internalized a very sort of so to make the point, people understand, look, it's about society enabling everyone, including those people, to lead decent lives. So yes,
Even as they do what they do.
Even as they do what they do, it should be valued because it's important. They should feel a sense of self-esteem and belonging and social security. So I should be a hawker, if that's what I am able to do at this point in time.
With pride and dignity.
Not only that, no, who lives in a decent house. Okay, society tries to make sure that I can at least, and that's not difficult, by the way, that I have access to healthcare. And my children, because it is not their fault that I am struggling, have a sort of equal chance with the children of the next person. But what I am finding interesting is that our middle class is very hostile to that idea. In a sense, it's almost like we have developed a culture of a caste society, and that people in the lower caste should remain there. And this sort of thing you experience in a place like India or even in Rwanda, that my self-esteem derives from the fact that there are people below me.
I have people I'm sitting on.
Yeah, I have people who are below me of lower status. Therefore, I'm of a higher status. It's something which I think this hustler narrative has brought out, and I think it's a very ugly. It's a very, very ugly side of our society that we need to start thinking about and probably being more conscious. be more conscious of.
Of the people who feel oppressed.
No, of the people who feel that they are that.
So we need to deal with the people who feel they need to be at the top, and we need to be at their feet.
It is the people who feel entitled. It is the people who look down on others that we need to deal with, not the people at the bottom.
Okay.
But that has been systemic. It's what the colonizers instilled in us.
It is the people who are looking down on others, and who stigmatized what those people do, and who are belittling any sort of initiative or any discourse around how you can improve, sort of dignify those lives. And can only cast it in saying that what can wheelbarrow transform Kenya, can it bring industrialization? That's rubbish. It's complete nonsense.
So
that's not what society is about.
All right. There's someone who has asked here, that is Sir Eric Mwangi, there's the owner of Maridadi Motors. He's asking, Bitok, ask Daktari to comment about the government's plan to ban importation of pre-owned used vehicles and force the market to consume the brand new ones imported by the multinationals. If this was actually implemented, what would be the social economic impact, positive or negative? Now that used car dealerships already employ thousands of young people, is it good economics to kill already existing jobs in promise to create new ones in the future? I think that really falls around entitlement of people.
I have written extensively about that. We had this debate in the 90s. I actually didn't think we would go back to it. That if you look at the way that things were before liberalization in 93, when we had locally assembled cars. I think we used to produce something like 12 to 15,000 locally assembled cars, and importing was very difficult because of foreign exchange controls. Owning car was a status symbol. Back then, very serious. It was such a serious status symbol that the idea that a very ordinary person on the street could own a car. In fact, you had to, the cars that would become available to what you call middle class people would be third and fourth hand, because first of all, car would be bought by a company for the CEO or managers. Then after a couple of years, it would sell it to someone else, and blah blah blah. So they're very so the liberalization changed all of, and we had a huge debate in the 90s, including one which I participated in, defending liberalization. And actually it went out that in the end, and you see this across the board, not just in the motor vehicle sector, the motor industry employs many more people now. Many more people have access to cars than would ever have been possible under that old system that we want to restore. The idea that, and I saw the policy paper that this is based on, and I have critiqued it, and it's actually very backward. I have called it exactly that. It is extremely backward thinking. But it is indeed a reflection of this capture. The Uhuru is actually, if you look at Uhuru and the people he's been meeting in policy, he meets these KEPSA sort of same people, of which obviously his family enterprises are members of. Those are the people who he's been sort of informing his policy thinking, and that's their mindset. Those are the people, and they actually write it into policy. These are the things we abandoned in the 80s because they failed. Yeah, again, so you see the restorationism not just in the political sphere, but you see the restorationism also, restoring old order, even in the economic sphere. Yeah, so it is actually taking us backward, both ways. And they are related, because that is a system in which these corporate cartels would make money. So the problem they have is with that people like that, like the owner of this business who's talking about it. That's what I call the difference between the big C and the small C. That's the real contest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they don't want small capitalists like Mwangi to thrive.
That's the finish.
No, they don't.
And the people who are shaping policy are the members of the big C.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they do it openly. They meet in State House. I don't know what breakfast with KEPSA, whatever. They're the same people. You know,
there is no space for the micro and the small C's. Anyway, Mwangi, looks like that is a destiny for you. You have a topple, the top C, or you find an handshake with them. You decide to deal with them. Maybe you sell it off the small C to them. Then you come back now. You go to the D.
No, but what happens is that if you go that route, the industry shrinks.
Yeah.
Because it cannot actually support the size of motor vehicle industry and ownership of what about it starts to shrink. The quality of the fleet deteriorates. It actually basically and those are some of the things which are killing the economy. This idea of protectionism as an economic model is so outdated that I cannot possibly believe that anybody would try and revive it in this day and age.
It's quite interesting. Anyway, you're gonna see that's and I usually listen to these middle class people who always talk about not wanting to participate in politics. Politics is this and that, but then you realize it affects you at every single level. Whether you want to participate or not, because all these decisions that are being made right now more majorly political. There are people who sit in a corner and say, "Now we are going to face out this because we want to deal with this person or with the other person." Anyway, I want to take you to Siasa kidogo. The Jubilee purge that's happening yesterday. 4 senators were kicked out. Today, Kenyatta might face the shredder. Crime is a letter he wrote to the president.
Jubilee Party is Kanu. That's Kanu style. It's Kanu disciplinary committee. In civilized polities, political parties don't expel members. You need people. They allow dissent.
And how many members has ODM suspended since they joined Jubilee? That could be a question because now they're also supporting another person.
Numbers. But basically, as again, and you see this all the time, it's intolerance. And it shows very, very clearly the authoritarian instinct of, you see also, it's also the fact that someone like Uhuru Kenyatta has not actually understand how the presidential system, even works. If you look at where presidential successful is like in the US, the party belongs to its members. And the party's main business is to win seats in parliament and to control parliament, legislature. That's why you find the Democrats and Republicans fighting tooth and nail for control of the Senate, like you saw not too long ago. As far as the presidency is concerned, once the party gives you a ticket after the primary, you go and run a presidential campaign. If you win, you go to the White House and you leave party affairs. The job of the party is now the executive president. Your job is to run the government. You have no further interest in the party, because after that you retire from politics,
and the party lives beyond you.
So the politics of what's going on in the party, controlling the party when you are the president, is actually somebody who actually doesn't understand, unless, of course, as we said, he doesn't want to go away. We know that he doesn't. So he is trying to purge the party so that it supports whatever it is that he wants, whether it's life president or whether he's the one who's going to become, or thinks he's the one who's going to become a prime minister in the new configuration, or whether it is his puppet or a relative who is going to put there. It is still showing exactly what we say, that this is not a president who is retiring. He's a president who is trying to exert even more control on the politics of the country.
And he's actually mentioned that beyond his position, he still be no, quite related. Kenyatta wrote a letter, and he's talked about apathy in central Kenya. I would want to pick your mind. The president was in Sagana the other day, and he was trying to whip these people behind him, telling them, I'm the only person who has your interest. Is there, from the pointers that Kenyatta gave, it gave a community that's already, that's kind of, it's restless. So to say, what's happening in central Kenya? You come from there yourself.
You note that Kenyatta did not go to central Kenya. He went to State House in Sagana. And then he had a rented crowd.
Okay.
He went to a safe space. which is State House. Then the crowds were brought the way they used to be brought by the PC to Moi and his father to sing his praises and do traditional dances. And then they said, yeah, now I am in control of central Kenya. He isn't. Uhuru is not a leader of the Kikuyu, for Christ's sake. Kikuyus don't have kings to begin with. I have more sort of... Uhuru doesn't even know his peers because he grew up in State House. If I go around the country in central Kenya, I can convene more people and more important people than he ever can. Because they are people I went to school with, from primary school to university, we worked together, we hustled together, we shared houses. That's how you build social capital. And that's how you understand the people. He is not one of us. Simply put, he's a prince. What happened is an accident of history. He'd been rejected before. Okay? But PEV happened. Then you know the PEV narrative, the story that Kibaki did not sort of help his people, that it is Uhuru who sort of helped retaliate and sort of protect his people from that kind of thing. I don't know how true it is, but the long and short of it is he ends up in The Hague. So when he ends up in The Hague, the community feels indebted. That this guy helped us, and now he's going to suffer. So they concoct this narrative with William Ruto. He concocts it and co-opts William Ruto that they either hang together or they will hang separately. So they hang together and they go and sell peace pact to the people. Now, traditionally that makes sense to people because communities in Africa, they fought. They still fight. I see the conclaves between the Pokots and the Turkana after they have fought in Capello and they sort of have a conclave and have a peace pact. So in a sense, I think that is how this was received by the people. That let's solve this thing domestically. Let's have this peace pact. They believe in it, and let's help our people not to be tried in The Hague. Now, when that happened, it propelled Uhuru to the presidency. He seemed to have confused that with being bestowed Kikuyu leadership. But actually, Kikuyus were discharging a debt. Then, once they discharged the debt and he was propelled to the president of Kenya, he thinks he's a Kikuyu chieftain and start pissing on people. And he's winding them up. And he's messing the economy. And he's got very bad personal sort of chemistry with people because he's arrogant and he's got many, many, many things which make him not the kind of person that would become a Kikuyu leader, even if one was to become one. And that's not the way that leadership emerges in Kikuyu society. So, and of course he wouldn't know because he's not socialized into Kikuyu society. So there he is. He's conflated state power with community leadership. Community leadership is earned through accumulating social capital in very subtle ways. And in a way, if you look at the sort of people who probably nudged him in that, and I think they did as an injustice, in disservice. People like the late Mishuki. The Jenga Karume and others. If you see the way they emerged as community leaders, it was not the same way that these people, they earned their stripes. He hasn't earned his stripes. Uhuru has never earned his stripes in Kikuyu society. He has no status, really, even though there is no formal leadership. And that's exactly what's going on, and I can say that without fear of contradiction. He thought that state power
it's automatically community.
It's automatically community leadership. And then he goes ahead and he destroys the economy. Before Uhuru became prime president, there were people, many people, who, you have 5 cows. You're milking 4 or 5 cows, you're getting 20 kilos of milk a day. That's like you probably from a sort of livestock keeping community. If you're getting 20 kilos, you're delivering 60, 80 kilos of milk, you're getting 30 shillings a kilo. That's 3,000 shillings a day. You're talking about, and that's fairly high income in rural Kenya. If you're getting 60, 70,000 shillings, those are well-off people. Those people have lost their income. They have 1 cow, they're getting 20 kilos, and sometimes not too long ago they were being paid 20 shillings. Wow. Now that is very personal. And who has done it? What do they see? They see Uhuru Kenyatta dairy expired, the Kenyatta family dairy enterprise.
Expanding. As the economy of the farmer.
That is very personal. I have relatives, young relatives, who are consolidating cargo. One of them is my cousin, is an electrician. They were consolidating cargo. Bringing electrical goods, distributing all sorts of things. They were supporting themselves. Okay? The businesses failed.
Because of the politicians.
Now these are people who are asking for arms to send their kids to hospital. Okay, so there is very, very real economic grievance against, again, the kind of thing we are talking about, because Uhuru has impoverished the people and enriched his family.
It's a protest.
And it's not a he has enriched his family and impoverished the people. And people are not stupid. They can see it. And then he pieces on their heads politically. And he expects to be recognised. He's asking for a bit much.
So him coming out of Sagana the other day and saying, now I'm in control, Simba, I'm in
control of what? Why did he go to the
State
House? He should have gone to the public. Let him come to Kiambu Kirigiti Stadium. I will go there. And let's face off.
As the end of State House, Sagana.
No, let him come to Kirigiti Stadium, Kiambu, and I will appear and
open a public meeting.
And we have a face off.
Wow. Are you ready for that?
Absolutely. I'm spoiling for it.
You're ready to face him in
I am
Kirigiti Stadium?
spoiling for it. I would like to face Uhuru Kenyatta in the Kikuyu public.
David Ndii.
Yes.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. It's a dare.
You want to face him in Kirigiti Stadium?
I want to face him in the Kikuyu public forum.
Okay. Hiya. I hope it gets to him.
Yeah. Let him get the message.
But the president, how did he get to a point where he feels he needs to defend? The other day he was telling the Kikuyu someone came through the back door. How did he get there?
Who came through the back door? I didn't get that one.
How did he get to a point where he feels he needs to go back to his one inside them? Because he was talking about kukitupa hata sisi tuko tayari kutupa. How did it get there?
First of all, Uhuru is the president of Kenya. He should not be talking about Kikuyu. Again, it's back to what I said. This idea of they divide people vertically. Yeah. So somehow he thinks that his claim to presidency is because he's the chief of the Kikuyu. And therefore, anybody else coming to Kikuyu land to ask for votes is coming to his backyard. It's like the thing they call Baba's bedroom in Kibera. So these are sort of tribal warlords. Yeah? And that's the model of political system that they want to preserve. And in fact, it is what they want to institutionalize in BBI. So they say, okay, if we create 5 positions and we have 5 tribal chiefs, oligarchs, occupy these positions. You know, in Kenya, if you take any of the 5 big communities, you get 70% of the population. So it's a dictatorship of oligarchs, of tribal oligarchs, who of course means that the other 30 communities, the other 40-something communities, which make up 70%, 30% of the population, they can forget it. And of course, with the Mount Kenya people, whereby Kikuyu in particular, being the largest of them, even if they are not occupying the president, they can claim to be the first among equals in that conclave of tribal chiefs, of oligarchs. So that's what they want. They want to restore, they want to create a dynastic oligarchy.
A communion of dynasty.
So obviously, if you want to create a dynastic oligarchy, which is based on tribal strength, then obviously you have to show that you are in control of your tribe. That's why I say he's not going anywhere. That's why he wants to assert control of his tribe. Kibaki left. Since when did you have had Kikuyu? Kibaki sort of tried to claim any sort of Kikuyu leadership. He was the president of Kenya. He finished his presidency of Kenya and went home.
Disappeared.
Yeah. Why isn't Uhuru doing the same? Even Moi. He finished the presidency of Kenya.
I really forgot about it.
And he went home.
The other day when he did his own.
When you remember, But they are
trying.
trying to revive his whatever. They are trying to create a narrative around it. I don't know what narrative they are trying to create a narrative. And I do not think it is something that Moi would approve. Moi had many faults. But actually Moi was a Kenyan nationalist. So these things they are trying to do, I don't actually think it's something that he would approve.
Okay, we're going to pick a couple of calls as we end up towards our tail end. I'm saying Wilfred Bet. You can call in Bungala Manyenchi kwa 0779-800-010 or 779-800-010. You can call in and give us your contribution and only take I think 3 or 4 calls, and then when we come back we'll get towards our tail end. Wilfred Bet is asking about how. All right, let me take a call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, Gerard.
Yes, how are you?
Habari.
Salama sana.
Elmia Devindia hapo na Lucia. Great conversation hapo. I agree with Daktari hapo that the fact that the government needs to invest in people, not in projects. Because it's the people who build the economy, not the project. Because take an example of the expressway that is being built in Westlands. In real sense, that project is never going to benefit the common person, but the common person is the one that's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Another thing is the SGR. The SGR per day, it's only like 8 trains that go through the SGR. But the common person doesn't benefit from that project, but she's the one that is putting the bill through this overtax based on how we're being overtaxed. So the biggest problem that we have in this country is the fact that the current administration doesn't care about the common person, but it's a group of thieves who have come together to loot the country through the excess borrowing and overtaxation of the common person. This has resulted to the fact that the common person doesn't have money at all in his pocket currently.
Okay.
So I think another thing is about the constitution. I managed to attend one of the Linda Katiba meetings. Probably David might remember me. The issue is that the current government wants to destabilize the systems that we have in the country. That is the judiciary, the legislation. Already they have control of the executive, so we don't even want to talk about that.
Okay.
So I think Kenyans need to come up in arms so that we can defend at least the judiciary. Because the issue is that these people, they know at the end of the day they are going to get out of power. But what they want to do is they want to have an arm in the judiciary so that we don't go after them after they have done with the administration. Because currently, I think the president needs to be charged for crimes, economic crimes, because they have totally impoverished this country. And I think this BBI thing, we don't need even to talk about it. Because as David has put it there, is that this is just a group of tribal chiefs who are going to come together to form the next government. And that's why they are all united against one person in the name of William Ruto. Because he's the one that is speaking for the common person. And Uhuru, I think, has exposed himself as the person who was the biggest problem in the Jubilee government. So, I think Kenyans need to learn from our history and not allow what happened in the past to happen again come 2022. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, my brother, and have a good day.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Jamaa wako anasema ulikuwa naye kwa Linda Katiba. La mtu sasa na Linda Katiba. Tiso this general, please ask Dr. Ndii to explain us whether this wheelbarrow narrative makes sense. I think he had talked about maybe you can touch on the Njuguna benefits of this project are more on the contractors, cartels, all business people involved in it about national projects. I think the people who benefit from it actually the cartels and the contractors. Joshua Njaga says, how can we help the economy of Kenya? Saying Wilfred Bate. Gerald Bitok asked about how devolution can be used for agricultural revitalization with a focus on per capita income, cite the model of lending to farmers through inputs. Right? I think that's something to take note of. Make a distinction as follows. There is our goal as Kenyans and the goals of the political class. Now we Kenyans don't have the wherewithal or the organization to seize control of the political class. So we look to the political class for a line of best fit that is in tune with our interest. As the political class is currently constituted, Ruta is in the line is a line of best fit. He has the means and the motive to weaken the political class. We share this goal. Once the political class is weaned, democratic space expands. No one else apart from this has the means to do it. I think that's kind of interesting.
Amazing comments. The first gentleman, he made very important points. Yeah. One, that government, I hadn't used that language. I think I prefer actually his language, because he said government should invest in people, not projects. Yeah, I think that should be
and then the people now will
maxim, people, not projects. This government has been all about projects at the expense of people. So that, I think, he's put it very,
and it's
very
the people
well.
that take the burden.
Yes. Yeah. If you talk about the expressway he has just talked about, I made a comment. I mean, it's a good example of what I'm calling absolute power. If you go back several years, we have several studies and projects under preparation for a mass transit system for Nairobi. Okay? All of them, the ones I've seen, the FDB project and a couple of others, BRT things which have been proposed, all of them are cheaper than this expressway. The cost, it would have cost much, much less to put a mass transit system in place. You can use the Tanzania BRT as a benchmark. You can use the Ethiopian light rail as a benchmark. This thing we are being told, well, just this expressway, this ugly thing, 60 billion shillings or thereabouts. Ethiopian light rail system cost about 50 or something less in dollar terms. But, and this is the whole point about Uhuru absolute power. He wakes up one day, he agrees with the Chinese, they are building this thing, there's no room for debate, the public consultations are a sham. Yet, if we had followed the constitution, many of us can go there and participate and demonstrate that this project is not value for money. But you see, once Uhuru says the idea that you can challenge, you can be challenged, is absolute. I cannot sort of there be challenged. Then I say, let him come and bring those things of his and put them on the table and defend them in front of people. He's a coward. He cannot. So he hides behind state power, and he's going to leave it soon. And he's going to find us out here. So
he'll still be here chilling.
We'll still be here.
Chilling and waiting for
him. If he hasn't killed us, we'll still be here.
Today he decided to cheat. Yeah. Today I'm the president.
Yeah. And I think to have a president who's a coward, who doesn't have the guts to, he's insecure, he has a chip on his shoulder, he's a complete coward, he wants to give orders and use policemen. It's a very unfortunate thing for someone of his age.
I hope they don't come for you.
They should. Let them come.
I hope they don't come for you. They have gone for some Korea.
We're fed up. We're fed up with this nonsense. It's our country. We cannot have one person just making us run around for many years. Wasted our money, wasted our time, and now he wants us to spend another 2 years in this rigmarole. We have to call him out. This is complete nonsense. Who does he think he is?
Oh, good question. Who does he think he is? Now, there's someone on the issues of second-hand vehicles. There's someone who has made a comment here. But you're going to say is, you'd see a new Peugeot or a Mahindra model being driven around the house in the hill, I think that's State House, in the new of launching, and a few days later, CS Trade and there's starts stories. They're getting second-hand cars and spare parts with fake reasons that they are unsafe and unroadworthy. The kind of cartels that structure the economy. I mean, do you get the picture? This guy is drawing.
These guys should read the new motor, I think the motor industry strategy or something. I can find it because I wrote about it. If you go into my columns, I wrote in The Elephant, there's actually a paper I have written specifically about this thing. And one of the shocking things about it is when you read it, inside it gives the list of companies that contributed to the policy. And it's all local motor vehicle people, component manufacturers, all sorts of people. You never do that in policy. You cannot have an interest group, decide policy against, because you do not see importers, you don't see these traders. So the government got a bunch of local motor vehicle industry actors, manufacturers, industrialists, and they wrote a motor vehicle industry policy for the country.
Wow.
It's completely wrong. Because government policy should balance all interests.
So to cut across.
What interests are we promoting? What is the objective of this? So these guys say we can actually create some number of jobs. It's actually not true, but even the numbers they have given cannot compensate for the jobs which will be lost. But there's no debate because it's a closed shop between them and the government. So even how you do policy, they don't know. That's not how you do policy. That is basically straight out state capture. And you have smart people in those places and say, what happened to people? But is this system, I say, it's become a system which is impervious to reason. It is impervious to listening to other voices. It doesn't listen to people. Yeah? And that's how you end up with crap like that being called policy. So these people who are talking, they're absolutely right. They are onto something. But we have this idea that in Kenya, government knows everything. So if government has promulgated a policy, that policy is smart. The only thing I have seen generated by Jubilee government is stupid policies from the beginning.
That's the only thing.
Only stupid policies.
Right. Interesting.
And it's because of the conflict of interest. It's because they are all pervaded by conflict of interest.
Okay. All right. Tatusikia mwingine. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Doc. How are you?
Salama sana. Very quickly.
Okay, my name is Abi Hakim and I'm a youth who is in Qatar.
Pardon?
My name is Abi Hakim Hassan and I'm a youth who is in Qatar.
Okay, sir. Talk to us.
We've got almost, let's say, 20,000 youth in Qatar right now. 20,000
youth.
Almost 20,000 in Qatar,
okay,
who are earning even less than, let's say, about 1,000 Qatar riyal, which, let's say, is equivalent to 9,000 Kenyan shillings. In case, let's say, you get to the month, to spend here and for your family, and let's say you might save around 10,000
Kenyan shilling.
So, what future does the country, let's say the president himself, Uhuru Kenyatta, what is he preparing for the youth who are right now suffering in Qatar, who are earning less than?
Wow. You see, the things that can't answer.
Yeah. That's very
I'm really
sad.
sorry we lost him, but
but he made his point.
Yeah.
20,000 Kenyan youth in Qatar, earning, he said, 25,000 shillings a month.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a problem in Qatar of slave labor because of this hosting the World Cup. So they've brought all these migrant workers who have been treated very badly. And I think we must have sort of facilitated these youth to go there. So when you get to the point where the government is actually facilitating exporting of its people to go and do slave labor,
it becomes
you obviously have no answers to the questions. But why don't we have any answers? Because these cartels I'm talking about, this motor vehicle industry policy I'm talking about, the dairy cartel, the protectionism of these KEPSA, so-called captains of industry, those are job-killing policies.
All right. We have someone from Georgia. Good morning.
Good morning, Bishop.
How are you, sir? Who am I speaking to?
My name is Robert from the diaspora.
Mambo Kobe.
Yes, I'm calling and I wanted to ask Dr. Yapo. Does he think Kenya we need a kind of a revolution in mind that we have to kick out these despots out of power? Because the reason most of us have ran out diaspora is looking for better chances. And we are still young. But the system in government has still frustrated so many of us because we don't have any white collar jobs in Kenya. We are not becoming industrialized as we grow up. But the Uhurus and the Odingas and the Rutos and all that kind of stuff, they have incorporated the country such that we don't have any space in our own country where we grew up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That was my last call, so that we don't keep the time for long. But there are things I want you to pick. Minimum tax, so that also that allow you to continue with your thoughts. Minimum tax. There's someone who's asking about the minimum tax.
Which minimum tax?
The minimum sale tax. The government.
Oh, the sales.
Imposed, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Minimum tax that the government has imposed on traders. I want you to pick on that. And then there was the issue of using devolution to catalyze development in the county agriculture, giving maybe loans in terms of inputs to see if we can spark.
Okay, let me as well as his point. One of the things that Kenyans need to appreciate is to make a connection between political development and economic development, and that's something we do not do. And the reason why many of us, I'm an economist, and I find I'm very preoccupied with politics, is because I know that unless you have political development is the foundation, and the fundamental problem of this country is political development, the kind of thing that you're talking about. The way that people can be empowered to drive the country in the direction that is progressive is, first of all, democratic space is absolutely critical. And the reason why these people want to close democratic space is so that they can have a carte blanche on making the policies they want for themselves. Okay, so Kenyans need to realize, as I said, that there is a direct link between this restoration of authoritarianism and killing opportunity. But because that's the way even the colonial system works, what it does is then you are then able to repress people violently. And if you look at what they are investing in, the state is capacity for violence. Yeah, we've just ordered 120 APCs, like the ones you saw Museveni using in the election. I think 118. It was in the paper the other day. So why are we ordering Museveni?
What are we preparing for?
15. What are we preparing for? Okay. We are preparing to exploit people and then repress them politically so that they don't have a voice. So voice is absolutely important. I hear people saying, I'm not going to get involved in politics. Then they start complaining about economic whatever they even have to, whatever. But I said they have to do the work. You got to earn it. Sure. If we don't sort of do the political work, you're not going to get the economic benefits. People, that the idea that doing politics is something for just the people for the sake of it, it isn't. The taxation issues, I don't want to spend all time because this taxation, capricious taxation that you are seeing is a consequence of the delinquent, irresponsible borrowing that you have been doing. And we all know about that. I talked about it a lot. I started talking about it as soon as they started doing the SGR, that we are going to pay for this.
And sure, we are paying through on.
So it is an attempt to pay to find a way of paying for this. Obviously, the economy doesn't have the capacity to do it because this money was squandered. Yeah, somebody already talked about the SGR and the way it is not actually generating any economic benefits. So you have emasculated the economy, expanded public projects at the expense of investing in productive things that people do. And then you are trying to tax those people who you have already crowded out of the economy. So what happens is that you try and tax them, you discourage businesses further, so you have a downward spiral. That's going to be the impact of this until you find a way of unraveling the public debt problem. And that's going to take us, it's going to be very, very costly. And I think many Kenyans don't actually appreciate. We have another, Uhuru Kenyatta's irresponsible economics is going to cost us another 5 to 6 years, best case scenario, trying to resolve these problems.
So even whatever
if we get him
comes,
out.
What if we don't get him out?
If we get him out, then it's the dogs. We're going to the pits. There's no way about it. We are going to go the Sudan route if we don't get him out. He'll go out like Bashir. because that's exactly
Locking up in a toilet.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. That's good. Someone actually described Kenya's taxation as as like milking a dying cow or a dead cow.
There was another point. Devolution.
Yes, about devolution.
About agriculture. Our agricultural problem, and it's very, very fundamental, is actually the one thing that the first thing that we need to do in this country to get the economy, people's economy up again, is a productivity problem. Okay? Our agricultural productivity has stagnated for over 20 years. If you look at maize yields, for instance, they've been stagnant for over 20 years. Why isn't agricultural productivity stagnated? It is because government is not doing very basic things. It is not credit and all these things that people think that whatever. If you do that and your productivity is low, you're just wasting those resources.
The same cycle of a problem.
What you need is the government services that promote agriculture are research and extension.
Okay.
New varieties of crops and things, and then getting out those to farmers and advising farmers. So you need, and those services are devolved. But even as they are devolved, they are really not being done at scale.
The way it ought to be.
You need to do it at scale. If you're talking about agriculture, there are some agricultural investments we need to do, asset building at the farm level, in particular places, particularly focusing on our resource-poor farmers. But basically, even if you keep feeding inputs and subsidies into a system where productivity is low, technical productivity is low, you are not going to solve the problem. So you need to fix the problem of technical productivity.
Right. There's a question that has really been pushed here. I think this should be your second last question. I want you to ask Ndii one question for me. What is that unique thing Ruto has that is different from the other Kikuyu leaders who went against the wave in 60s and 70s?
What is that?
Should I read it again?
Yes, please.
I want you to ask Ndii one question for me. What is that unique thing Ruto has that is different from the other Kikuyu leaders who went against the wave in 60s and 70s?
Against the wave? I don't know. There's a myth that that Kikuyus have a paramount chief who they follow. It's wrong, and it's contradicted by evidence from day one. Jomo Kenyatta's biggest opponents were Kikuyus. Even if the political, the Kagias, the people, the JM Karaokes, the Ngugi wa Thiong'os detained, we do not have paramount chiefs.
Never.
If you look at 92, some paramount chief, how many times did Mwai Kibaki? And it is not even Kikuyus who got him to be president. Yeah, it is the NAC wave, and he encountered opposition throughout from lots of Kikuyu people. So this myth that Kikuyus have a paramount chief, which Uhuru was having pretenses of becoming, is completely wrong. I think there is a tendency for Kenyans to look at some of the Kenyans who have these kind of leaders, like the Luos who have Odingaism as some sort of paramount chief, and other people. You see some big chiefs like Nyachai in Kisii and Moi for a while, or it's almost like a paramount chief of the Kalenjin. We don't have that.
There's no paramount chief.
There's no paramount.
So there's no wave to go against.
There's no wave to go against. If you look at 92, had Madiba not gotten sick, there you would have seen lots of contest between Matiba and Kibaki. And really, those were national politicians.
Even 2002 there was Uhuru and Kibaki.
And Kibaki. Those are national politicians. We do not... National politics... Kikuyu national politics, the way it plays out at the national level...
You don't devolve it.
Is not... Don't devolve it. It is not Kikuyu leadership at the community level, at the cultural level. It isn't.
All right. Your last question. I've seen something you've really been talking about, the demolitions that are going on in this country. It looks like the government is out on a spree, kind of an opium-induced spree of destroying properties, maybe doing demolitions. You see what is happening with the railways. I don't know what you think about that. Which right comes first? What comes first? I've seen a mosque that was demolished the other day, that was built in 1938. I saw a church, an SEK church, that was built in 1973, that was demolished. I'm seeing people who have lived in a place, thousands of families that have lived in those for several years. What comes before the other incumbent? The other day it was in Ruiru.
If you look at when did this begin? If you this particular wave of demolitions, you can trace it to the handshake. Remember, it began with riparian things, or saying that they are removing riparian buildings in Nairobi.
And it was actually say they were targeting the DP at that time.
Okay. Yeah. What these are the things I'm saying is Uhuru's impunity platform. Projecting state power. I can do this and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, it is sending a message
that if you want to try me, this is what I can do.
That's his way of projecting power, because he's been rejected by the people. Okay, so how does he show it? This is what he calls roaring.
Roaring lion.
Yeah. So roaring lion is to cowardly send a bulldozer at night to demolish people's properties in the name of development. They are also grabbing the land. So those two things are related. If you look at Roy, again, I said this is to facilitate their family investment. So it's a very primitive, sort of almost feudal mentality of ownership of the country. Yeah. So it is projecting that this is my this is, I'm the president. Yeah, I'm the king. I can do what I damn well please, just to keep you people in line. Yeah, and of course, it is also contempt. It is also showing a sort of contempt card to the Constitution and the Judiciary, because there is a very, very clear ruling recently from that case of Mitumba village and Kenya Airways Authority, that says that people who have been settled on public land for a long time have shelter rights, because the Constitution gives the right to shelter. They have shelter rights which supersede the state's property rights on that land, because the land belongs to the people and the state is holding that land in trust for the people. So you cannot, and the state has an obligation to provide people, to ensure that people are housed, have shelter. It's a basic right. So the state holding trust in the people cannot make people homeless on land it holds in trust for them, even if that land is required for something else, without providing them alternative shelter. So a civilized government which obeys the Constitution would have found alternative public land for those people and said, we need this land for X, your community has to move there.
Why?
Yeah, then you do the modalities of moving the community to that place, and then once the community has moved, you come and flatten things without any. That is how a civilized government should behave. And they know it, but they're not doing it because they want to project power and they want to show contempt card to these things you people call rights and show you that you don't have them.
Your last remarks, your tackle of the day?
By tackle of the day?
Yes.
Is to tell Kenyans, look around you. Okay? Look at what is happening. We see every day the things I'm talking about. We see the government of Nairobi has been overthrown and militarized. Or we see projecting this kind of force. Defying the Constitution, defying the law, and sort of demolishing and making people homeless. We see the sort of thing that happened to the acting Chief Justice the other day. We see the way that BBI is being pushed, the way these people deliberately went out of their way to use chiefs and sub-chiefs to force people to sign that document. They could have gotten 1 billion signatures using a civilized method. They did not have to do that. They were doing that to make a statement. Okay? Uhuru Kenyatta is restoring dictatorship in Kenya day by day. And here your people thinking, we will have a free choice, vote yes or no in the referendum, have a free choice in 2022. The space for us to exercise that free choice is being closed day by day. If we don't fight for it now, when we get there, that space will not be there, and there will be nobody who will come here to rescue us.
It will be done.
The lights will go out, and there's no one who will come to rescue us.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. And the president, I hope he's saying he's heard you, he'll be waiting for you at cricket.
Yeah, let him set a date. We come there and meet the people. Let him not go hide in State House and get crowds burst. That was 1970s. This is 2000.
There's someone who has actually said he should run for president. He already has the vote for you. He'll vote for you. But anyway, thanks so much for always coming to the tackle and for honoring our invitation. It's always good to have you. We hope to see you again. So you can drive the conversation. I mean, we need to inspire also our generation, because I mean, there's something that really kept me thinking when you were talking. The same people have continued to fight for this country, which is you people. You fought, or it could be fighting a different war today, like what I'm doing now. In a space that I could be.
Yes,
but I feel we need to have more energies coming on board to understand that we need a better country, and it's not the responsibility of some people in a corner to drive change in a country. The country belongs to all of us. We all need to take responsibility. So we'll join you in the small way that we can drive the conversation.
Get these young people out. They need to speak out. You don't need to do very much. You need to speak out. You need to resist this oppression. You need to go and hold your MCAs accountable. If people do not want MCAs to pass this thing, they should be able to go and tell their MCAs, don't pass this thing.
And we've said it as a people.
And we've said it as a people.
Yeah, whether they give you 3 cards, 4 cards, or whatever it is.
You don't pass this thing. They should say, we as the constituents or the sort of member of this ward have voted, and write them letters. They should be able to write a petition, put their names down, and mobilize people and show that the majority of people in that ward have said, don't vote for this thing. If you vote for this thing, you're voting against the will of the people, and there will be hell to pay.
All right. Douglas Joroka says, I support Linda Katiba with all my body parts, with no exceptions.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the guys who have been joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. The tacklers, we love you. If it were not for you, the tackle would not be here. For the callers I've called in, I apologize for the calls that I've not been able to pick because of time, but we'll make more time next time, probably, for calls, but at least you've been able to feed on the wisdom that we've got. For the questions that are able to answer, I really appreciate as well. The people ambao sikuweza kusoma maswali yao pia, poleni. There's always a next time. This is the tackle, and the tackle ends now. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.